Binary Thoughts.
Hello everyone, I'm Arthur from binarythoughts.net. Today I'm going to talk to you about Category 5 cables, more specifically known as Ethernet cables. I'm going to teach you guys how to make these cables and just some tips on how to do that. They're pretty easy to make. You only need a couple of things. You need the raw cable. You can pick up this at most electrical stores or hardware stores. That's Category 5, or some consider it as Category 5E. That's what we're looking at specifically. To go along with that, you'll need the connectors. These are RJ45 connectors. You can probably pick them up at the same place you got the cable. The last thing you'll need is some RJ45 crimpers. Again, you can get this at the hardware store or electrical store. They run about anywhere from $20 to $40. And the cable and connectors come in a lot cheaper than that. So I guess we'll jump right into it, and then I'll go over some extra stuff afterwards. A quick rundown of what we're going to do in order to make these cables is we're going to cut our cable into the correct length, and then we're going to strip back the cable's insulator to get the bare wires. We're going to properly put them in the correct color sequence, and then we're going to slap a connector on there and crimp it down. And that's pretty much how you make an Ethernet cable. As I mentioned before, the first step to making our Category 5 cable is going to be measuring out our cable and cutting it to the desired length. I don't think I need to show this because it's pretty self-explanatory. Just measure out your cable and then go ahead and cut it with some scissors or wire cutters. There's also should be some wire cutters on your crimper as well, depending what brand of crimper you buy. So once you've got your cable already cut, the next step is stripping back the insulator. You can do this with any pair of wire strippers that are this gauge, or on your RJ45 crimpers, you should have a pair of wire strippers on them. If you don't, you can use a pair of scissors or even a knife. All you really got to do is cut back this blue coating, in this case, not nicking or cutting any of the inner wires. I'll show you with scissors, and maybe I'll do the crimpers the next time around. So what I do, you want to strip back about an inch or a little bit more, depending how good you are, I guess. So I go about that far out, and I barely cut down on the scissors, and then I just kind of rotate it around, just barely cutting through. You don't want to nick any of the internal wires, because it can make your cable not work properly. And as you can see, a line is kind of forming around the outside, but I actually haven't cut through because there's no actual holes or anything like that. So I got to keep adding a little bit more pressure and spinning it. Your first couple of times will take you a while to figure out how much pressure you got to add. And as you can see, I cut through. And if you just kind of bend it a little bit, and I like to twist it, just twist it back and forth, and it will rip it all the way across. And it should just slide off in a tube like that. One thing you want to do is, especially where you cut the wire, you want to look over the wires and make sure you didn't actually nick any of them. If it looks like you did, I suggest cutting it back further and restarting. You'll be surprised what the tiniest nicks will actually do to your cable's performance. So you see this right here, it's actually a string, it's not a wire. You can go ahead and trim that back, either using your wire cutters or scissors, as I am using. Gosh, if we can get it in there. And just to get it out of your way, that's actually the insulation on the cable. As you can see, there's a couple different colors of wire in here. We got an orange and white, a brown and white, a blue and white, and a green and white. And if you look closely on the white wires, they actually have a line or streaks of the same color that they were originally wrapped with. This is really important. So you can see that very faintly that there is a orange line on this whitish looking cable. That comes into important on the wiring code. And the wiring code you don't really need to worry about too much as long as you're doing it correctly. You can actually wire these differently with using the same connectors and get different types of cables. You can get patch cables and all sorts of different types of cables, but we want to make a category 5 straight through cable. But essentially what I'd start doing is you want to unravel all the wires so they're all kind of just hanging out by themselves, and as you do this you want to straighten them. The straighter the wires are, the easier it makes putting on the RJ45 connectors. So just pinch them and just pull them straight. They come straight pretty easy. So as you can see, I have all the wires straightened out. The next step is putting them in the correct color code. To do this, we're going to use this color combination or color code. This is the one I use for all of my Cat 5 cables. I've never had a problem with it, and it seems to work every time. So going back to our wires, again, if you have your wires all straightened out and kind of fanned out, will make it easier to do this. I like to go from right to left, and to do this I use the brown, and I just put that to my right hand side, and then following our color code, the next wire is our white with brown, and then it is our green, and I kind of just push these all together and hold them down with my index finger and my thumb as tight as I can within reason. And then the next color is going to be our solid blue, and it's a little bent, so I'm going to try to straighten it out, and I'm going to just push that over to the rest of them, and it should look something like that. Okay, so we got the brown, and then the white with the brown, the solid green, and then the solid blue. Next is the white with the line of blue, and I'm just going to pull that next to it. And it's okay if they're a little unevenly bent. We'll clip them down so they're more close together. But that's looking pretty good so far. The next color we need is the white with the green line. This is probably the most tricky part when doing the colors, because it's kind of hard to tell between the blue and the green with this wire set, mainly because it's just kind of hard to tell because the line's so small and they're kind of faded. But as you can see, I got the brown and then the white with the brown, the solid green, the solid blue, and then the white with the blue and the white with the green. Next is the solid orange. Just gonna push that with the rest of them and get that pushed in together. And the next step is just push this right into place. So now we have them all in order, and what I like to do is make sure I have them matched up properly by looking at the color code, or for me I just memorize it, so I just double check to make sure that I have it in the right order. Once I have it in the right order, I like to go ahead and clip it straight across where I am holding it. So without cutting yourself, just cut straight across and create them all straight and flat and in order. Before we can put the connector on, we have to make sure that we are putting the wires into the connector properly. Looking at the connector, I call this side the top side, and the bottom side, the one with the safety clip. So the safety clip side is the bottom, and just opposite of that is the top side. The reason why I'm telling you this is for relative directions of how I put the wires into the connector. Looking at the connector closely, you can see that there are little pipes inside of the connector where each one of the wires is going to go into. Taking a different view of it, you can see the pipes inside kind of look like teeth marks. Each one of the tiny wires has to go into the proper hole that it is dedicated for. Doing this one wire at a time would take extreme amount of time and wouldn't be really that efficient. But if you group up all the wires as we have been doing and keep them in the correct order with a firm grip and pushing them in slowly, you should be able to just slide them right into each one of the holes correctly. So the way I do this is I hold the connector facing upwards, and I hold the wire with the brown to the right hand side, so that we want the brown on the right hand side of the connector. So I'll give you guys a better view and push the wire straight in, and as you can see, the wires just went into each one of the holes perfectly. And before I push it in more, I always like to double check to make sure that they are in the correct color code, and it looks like they're perfectly aligned as they should be, and just go ahead and push that in. One thing you want to remember, and turning it to the side is a good way to tell, you want to push the wire all the way to the button. That way each one of the wires gets fully penetrated by the penetrator thing up there. So go ahead and push them all the way in, and each one of the wires should be fully pushed up against there, giving it a full and good connection. And double checking that up here, you can see all the wires are up against that pretty good, and it's ready for clamping. One thing to remember before clamping, it's ideal to have the insulator clamped down by that. This one's already been crimped down, so you can see where the crimp will actually push down on the insulator. That way the wires don't get pulled out. And also, if you look closely at this connector, you can see how the penetrators got pushed down into the center of the wires. So making sure that our insulator is in the proper location, just a little bit past that, and all our wires are up against the thing, it is ready for crimping. If you've never used crimpers before, it's pretty simple. There's a slot on the crimper that is made for the connector. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug it right into the right spot. And you want to push all the way down with one fluid motion when you go crimp. So I'm going to push it in and crimp it down with one fluid motion all the way down. And lift up, and now it is fully crimped, and we made a successful connection. So now we just have to do the same thing to the other end, and it's as simple as that.